Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features WildCATs number 6, cover dated December 1993, and this is chapter 1 of the Killer Instinct crossover between WildCATs and Marc Silvestri's Cyberforce. So the cover here features the main players from that crossover, Warblade going up against Ripclaw here, and then the woman they're fighting over, the femme fatale, Misery here. So great cover by Jim Lee, inked by Scott Williams. A lot of detail there, a lot of energy in the drawing, in particular in his rendition of Ripclaw. Marc Silvestri's character looks really good there. Quite a eye-catching, dynamic cover. No cover caption needed. So let's open this one up to the credits page. Here we go. Since the previous issue, the title is now printed on glossy paper, and the colouring just looks so much better, and the pencils and inks themselves look sharper on the glossy paper. So here we no longer have an editorial from Jim Lee. Instead we have a guide to the various parts of the crossover, and we have the credits, of course. So Brandon Choi and Jim Lee credited for the story, Jim Lee pencils, Scott Williams inks, Joe Chiodo colors, and Mike Heisler letterers. There's also ink assists by JD John Ty and Rich Johnson. So what that means is they're handling blacks, filling in blacks, background details, and leaving the figure inking, and in particular the faces, to Scott Williams. So let's see. So this picks up from the end of the previous issue, where the team escaped self-destruct in a Gamoran research facility up on this mountaintop. But just as they were escaping, Warblade was goaded by Misery to exit the teleport bubble that Void had thrown up. And so the team thinks that he's perished as the research facility went up in flames. And there's a debate going on here as to whether they should turn around and go back and search to see if Warblade is still alive. Spartan is determined that they need to get out of the airspace before the Gamorans send security after them. And it's too late, Priscilla points out here. Voodoo. This is a great anchor image of the whole team in the cockpit of their aircraft called Merv. This looks really well here. And so they have these, what they call Vipers on their tail, 3 of them. What's interesting here is that this second Viper is very clearly a photostat or a computer generated double of the primary drawing here, and the same with this even smaller one back here. So some time saved there, and actually throughout this issue, different from the previous issue, there isn't much in the way of backgrounds, and that's an indication that there is some deadline pressure here. There's 23 pages of story inside in the comic itself. There's a couple of double page spreads. One of those double page spread, it's a bit gratuitous. I'll talk about that when I get to it. The final double page spread is really well worth it. So the Merv is attacked by these rockets. It has some kind of shield that it throws up, but the other 2 Vipers send in their rockets too, and so the ship is hit and blows apart in midair. So the whole team then is in free fall, and they're just dodging this Viper here, and Maul advises Voodoo, make sure you stay clear of those intakes. That's a good piece of advice. And okay, there's something here that follows for the next few pages that is a little bit ridiculous. Look at the height here, how close they are to the mountains. By the way, these mountains with these snow-capped mountains are very nicely delineated here in this panel. I like it. I like the way that they're rendered. But how high up are they? Because they are falling for pages here, and the way that Brandon Choi is scripting the dialogue is they're just having chats with each other, almost as if they were in a cafe somewhere. It's crazy stuff, but the art looks good. Okay, So here is Grifter warning Spartan. He's just caught Voodoo about this Viper behind him. So Spartan uses his Bioblast here. This is a nice anchor image. Like the way that his leg is breaking the panel border here. Very dynamic pose on Spartan. And he uses his Bioblast, finds the Achilles heel of the Viper, and the Viper explodes in midair. And they're still falling, okay? So Maul here grabs Adriana, who was hit by some shrapnel when their craft exploded. And then he decides to take out the second Viper. So his power is to increase his size and mass. But unfortunately, when he does that, he loses his mental power, as in he becomes stupid, put it in more colloquial fashion. So he smashes into this Viper beneath him. That's a really cool image there. And all the while, Adriana is here in his fist. Now, what's a little bit unbelievable is how is he smashing that Viper with his fist and he's not injuring her? That's a little bit hard to take. Then, still falling is Grifter and Voodoo, and they have time for some banter. And this is a bit nuts, where he says, "I've got an idea, Zealot. Follow me." How do they direct themselves when they're falling? They should be falling straight to the ground. How are they directing themselves in the air? Like, how is that done? So they seem to be able to zero in on the Viper. I mean, like, what speed is it flying? And anyway, I mean, it's comics, yes, so we got to go along with this, but I don't know. It's stretching my credulity anyway. Great anchor image, though, nonetheless, of them making their way to the Viper there. And of course, they successfully managed to grab onto its hull. And Grifter has time to pull a cigarette out of his pack there, light it before blowing away in through the hull of the ship, and they catch the crew napping. I like this little detail here. I've only just seen this. I didn't see it before. It looks like it's Spartan out there with Voodoo. That's nice. And this is a great image of Grifter and Zealot coming in through the hole they've blasted in the hull of the ship. I really like the way that Jim Lee has kind of twisted Grifter's torso here, and I like this. He's very good at this. A 3/4 angled profile. So we're looking up under Grifter's jaw, and the same here with Zealot. I like that pose. And then we have a gun battle, and of course Grifter's going to win that. But then the whole problem for them is can he fly the ship? But the flight controls have been damaged, and Zealot's not happy about that. So Grifter's going to have to try and guide the craft on its crash landing and try his best to make sure that they can walk away from it. And that's what happens, and Zealot isn't giving him the credit for it. She says here, "It was lucky for us, this snowdrift cushioned our impact." And he's bantering with her, "Oh, so now you're Amelia Earhart. Listen, Zealot, any landing you can walk away from is a good one. I don't exactly remember you volunteered to, but there's a noise in the air," and it turns out to be Maul falling. Still falling all this time. I mean, like, how much time has passed here for all of this to happen? What are we talking about here? 5 minutes? 10? How long have they been falling? And as I said, it looked like Merv wasn't that high. It wasn't like 30,000, 40,000 feet high. So this stretches my credulity. You let me know in the comments what you think about it. And one thing I want to note here, and Jim Lee starts doing it from this point on in the issue, is the characters in that dark silhouette that he does with little details of their costume picked out. I really like that device of his. I know he does it when he's trying to save time, but it looks so well. And this is a great panel here where we've got this angled kind of upshot on Maul as he's falling down head first. And I like the way that we see his pectorals there, but then we see right up into the roof of his mouth from underneath. That's a great shot, very dynamic. And he hits the ground, and Grifter and Zealot manage to get away in silhouette here again. Maul emerges from the crater that he's created, falling into the snow, and he releases Adriana Void intact. So that's worked out well, but there's a problem. Unfortunately, at this size, his brain is simply shut down. So how are they going to deal with that? Well, the person who usually deals with that is Voodoo, but she's been injured, and there is a romantic relationship developing between Spartan and Voodoo. So Spartan is determined that Voodoo not weaken herself any further by trying to help Maul reduce his size. But Voodoo is determined. When Grifter makes the point that she needs to, she says, Grifter's right, Hadrian, I've got to try and use the sight to help Jeremy for the team's sake. And she does. And so he shrinks down and he gets his brain back. And of course, it's too much for Pris. She has exhausted herself. I like this panel here. I like the shading, especially on her nose and brow and the side of her face. That's really well done. I like that. So Void has got herself together. Great detail and fine detail inked onto Void in this panel. And she says she has a solution. She's got enough strength to teleport herself and Voodoo back to Halo, and then she'll come back. And while they're gone, Spartan and the others should search for Warblade, and once she's safe with Marlowe, she'll return for the rest of the team. So that's agreed. Away teleports Void with Voodoo, and then the team is left to salvage whatever equipment and food they can from the wreck of their craft Merv. And later on, having done that, I like this panel here where we see Zealot in the background checking this gun that she's picked from the wreckage. And we've got Grifter here who's salvaged a can of beer and gets into a little spat with Spartan about that, who is of course team leader. Spartan says, I thought Mr. Marlowe told you that alcohol was prohibited aboard the ship. Grifter retorts, yeah, well, he says a lot of things, Spartan. I just don't agree with him on most of them. Spartan says, we'll finish this later. Very Cyclops-like, eh? And then they fly towards, using jetpacks, the wreckage atop the mountain where that Gamoran research facility was. They land. That's a great shot of Zealot landing there. And who do they find? They find Misery and they find Warblade as well. So these two survived, and we'll find out in a few pages how they survived. But first of all, we have a action set piece where they start firing at her. That's a nice panel there. And she has some kind of shield, an energy shield, that she throws up to block their shots, including Spartan's Bioblast here. And then she teleports away and she says, WildCATs will meet again, count on it. She teleports away with unconscious Warblade too. So Grifter pulls off his shades, up with the mask. Oh, she's good. She's really good. And here in the background, I like this little detail. You've got a silhouette of Maul there with the M, the yellow M on his head, and his little eyes picked out as well. That's nice. I like that detail. And here we go. Here's the first double page spread, and it's one of these ones where I'm going to have to turn the comic to the side, make sure you can see all of that on camera. So it's a, you know, like at first glance, it's a pretty cool drawing. It's just them reacting to what's happened, standing around, kind of cool poses. But like, there's no action here. And for me, it's kind of a waste of a double page spread. And I wish Jim Lee had maybe done a double page spread for an action moment earlier on in the story. That might have been better. And the poses themselves, they're all right. They're not too bad. Spartan looks a bit short up here torso wise. I think Jim Lee was going for a kind of like a worm's eye view, so there'd be some foreshortening on his torso and chest, but I'm not sure it's quite working there. I'm a little bit surprised about that. So nice enough, but not the best. And you know, like a lot of people, one of the major criticisms of the likes of Rob Liefeld and Jim Lee is, where's the feet? And where are the feet there? And Jim Lee can draw feet, so it's not as if he can't, but it's just a bit strange, this choice. Anyway, let's continue with the story. And my favorite here, the characters in silhouette with little details of their costume showing. I like it. And we're back to the storytelling. And then apparently Spartan's got this ability that he explains here. My thermal imager can assimilate even the slightest residual heat patterns in the area. And by processing this data through my cerebral processing unit, I'm surprised I didn't say CPU and have a little footnote, CPU equals cerebral processing unit, because they love that in this comic, Brandon Choi anyway. I can ascertain what took place here. And I like this little detail of the panel borders here, where Jim Lee brings over from Marvel the curved panel border on the corners, which indicates that these are events that happened in the past, as well as the coloring choices by Joe Chiodo. So we see Warblade and Misery fighting, and apparently they part of the floor beneath them collapsed and both of them plummeted into this sub-basement, knocked unconscious by the fall. So that's how they survived the explosion. Misery recovered first. She went back up to look for, it turns out, maybe her lover, who's this guy Richtofen that was possessed by a Daemonite. He's dead, badly charred, and she snaps on account of that. Like this panel here with 3/4 of her figure in silhouette and the rest in the light as she's pulling Warblade by his ponytail towards this computer terminal where she's putting in an access code. Doesn't finish it because that's when the WildCATs arrived. So here's Spartan holding his chin, thinking about the fact that the security code hasn't been fully inputted. I like this little detail here of Grifter lighting up another cigarette, and just the lighting on his face, the cast shadows on his face, that's nicely done. Spartan tries to complete inputting the security code, and out pops this some kind of containment unit. It's a stasis pod, explains Grifter. I like the lighting here too, that 3/4 angle profile on Grifter, that's nice. And this is nice too, the stretched reflections on the curving surface, shiny curving surface of the stasis pod. It's nice, especially here on Spartan on this side, really nice. So a bit of thought going into this from Jim Lee, for sure. So Grifter's overconfident about opening up the stasis pod. He's done it before and he gets a massive electrical shock, but it doesn't kill him. Zealot here, Riley asks him, care to take another bite? He says, before you can respond, here in the background we've got Spartan in silhouette, but it's like a white silhouette and it's colored in by Joe Chiodo. You'd almost miss it except for the fact that he's given a piece of dialogue here. Hold it because I'm getting a call from Halo. It must be Marlowe, and indeed it is Marlowe. And Marlowe tells them that Void and Voodoo are doing well. So there's a bit of background detail here. We see Voodoo in this hovering medical bed unit with the team around her. And then Spartan starts explaining what they witnessed at the Gamoran research facility, and also Misery. And he says, it seemed as though she knew Warblade from before. Can you shed any light on this, sir? And Marlowe can. How's that? We're going to get a flashback here too. So Marlowe explains, about 2 years ago I was in Gamora with Jules on some business. That's his assistant. I got word from the Gnome, that's a character from the miniseries, that guy Kaizen Gamora had something I might be interested in. And it turns out to be the prototype of Spartan. And I like this shot, this kind of top-down angle on Jules and Marlowe in this Jeep. And this really evokes that era of Jim Lee's career when he was working on the Punisher War Journal. Just these 3 panels here puts me in mind of that period of his art. And then emerging from the rocks here at the coast is a disoriented Warblade who passes out, and that turns out to be the first time that Marlowe meets Warblade. So 2 years earlier, back at Halo, the Docs pulls some kind of control chip out of his head. Unfortunately, Warblade also lost part of his memory. It could be that the people who put that chip there want him back now. So they're trying to figure out what's going on. And this is a great panel too, more of that kind of silhouetting. Yes, it has to do with the fact that Jim Lee's trying to save time. These silhouettes are probably filled in by those guys credited for the art, the inking assists back on the credits page. Very nice detail of Spartan here in the background, still talking to Marlowe on his wrist-mounted communicator. And then scene switches to an island off the coast of Gomorrah. And the island is called the Isle of the Dead, a forbidden and sacred place where the Gomorrans bury their dearly departed. So here in a cemetery, Misery has obviously brought Warblade there, pinned him up against this slab, probably the top of the tomb. And he's come to, and he's asking where he is. And she's there saying, "Where it all began, my love." And then she switches to her telepathic power of communication, the very place where you tried to kill me, don't you remember? And that's how she mucks with his mind as well. So she's deliberately making him angry. This is a great profile shot of Warblade, and she's there with this smirk on her face, saying that on the contrary to his accusation that she double-crossed him and Bearclaw. On the contrary, darling, I tried to warn the others. That was when you attacked me, wasn't it? So this enrages him, and he pulls free of the chains that have tied him to the slab of rock, the tomb cover. This is a great shot of him, great detail on the back muscles here, pulling free of those chains. And again, the silhouette device leaping towards Misery. And he tells her, "I'll rip out your black heart with my own hands." But then somebody from off panel says, "Not this time, Butcher. Who could it be?" And here we go. This is the double page spread that's worth waiting for. Here it comes. Now look at that. That's amazing. That is really, really cool. So let's see. What do we have here? Well, lots of detail. Lots of fine hatching and dynamic poses. Look here, the twisting of the torso, the jutting of Warblade's head. I love this shadowing out of his face, just leaving the eyes, little tip of the side of his nose, and these teeth with the eye tooth there showing. Really makes him look bestial. Also with his flexed claws. And here he's facing off against Ripclaw from Mark Silvestri's Cyberforce. And this is a great angle on Ripclaw as well. He looks so beefy, muscled. Lots of fine hatching, delineating his musculature. Really, really great work. And a nice angle up here, like a kind of upshot profile on Ripclaw. Really, really nice stuff. And then Misery here in the background. I like this kind of pose that Jim Lee has drawn her in, where she's grabbing her shoulder on the other side of her chest. It's an interesting choice rather than just having her arm drop down here. And she's almost hugging herself with glee at the prospect of these two going at it, and hopefully, or maybe from her perspective, killing each other. And I like this little detail here in the background of the angel blowing the last trump as well. That's pretty cool too. And great double lighting throughout this image as well. Really, really nice work. And as I said, so much more pleasing than the earlier double page spread in the issue. Like, this is what I was following the book for at the time. The art, not the story, the art. And the art delivers here at the end of the issue. So the crossover continues in Cyberforce number 2. I do have that in my collection. So let me know in the comments if you'd like me to review Cyberforce number 2, or do you want me to press on with Jim Lee's art, which I know a lot of you are interested in on my channel, and just look at WildCATs number 7 when I next get to review another issue in this series. Do you want me to review Cyberforce number 2, or will I just press on and review WildCATs number 7 sometime next week? Let me know in the comments. So I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on WildCATs number 6. Just all ads in the back. If you did enjoy it, like the video on YouTube, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.